was a really interesting video. It gave me some pause for thought about what the X factor might be, if there is one, between animals and humans. I want to explore a little bit more that difference, and whether it's a discontinuity or are humans just a little bit further along, or much further along, a cognitive continuum shared with animals, and what all that means. As you said, Corey, a particular human characteristic is how we deal with what is not the case. We can imagine a different now, as well as a future that is a now that has not yet occurred. As far as we can tell, and if we don't project our own thoughts onto our pets, animals don't have this capability to anything remotely approaching ours. In fact, there's plenty of evidence showing that this potential in humans kicks in early childhood and develops to a greater or lesser degree as an individual's age. It's a continuum of cognitive accomplishment, and we see it in our ability to tell a story, or to imagine, to lie, empathise. Animals don't seem to have this at all, or if they do, only at a very rudimentary level. But in humans, it's the key, a sine qua non. Imagining what is not at hand includes imagining what another person has in mind. In cognitive research, that's theory of mind. It's the ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, intents, pretending, knowledge, etc. to others, and to understand that others have beliefs, desires and intentions that are different from our own. It's innate in humans, and it develops over the years to more or less effectiveness. Like empathy is the ability to put oneself in another's shoes, and it's better developed in some people than in others. We see that around us. It's very interesting, theory of mind research which is done with children, apes and other mammals, and that explores this continuum. For example, false belief tasks which demonstrate the subject's ability to imagine what someone else has in mind are usually attained by age 3 or 4, but seldom, and certainly not generally, by, say, chimpanzees or other great apes. It seems reasonable to hypothesize that this is the continuum that our position on defines us as humans. For example, the false belief task is, for instance, where 2 children are shown a marble being put into one of 2 bags. Then one child is taken outside, and the other is shown the marble being removed from the original bag and put into the other one. Then he or she is asked, where would the child outside now say the marble is? A child who has developed a theory of mind capacity will say, in the original bag, demonstrating a knowledge that other minds can have different beliefs than oneself. Kids generally get this around age 3 or 4, some earlier. Till then they think that everyone knows what they know. And there are some pretty elegant variations have been developed to make this a non-linguistic task, and to see whether the apes and other mammals have a theory of mind. And in general they don't, or if they do, it's highly controversial. Certainly nothing like the theory of mind that humans have. Existentialists like Sartre help us here too. The idea that humans discover themselves as humans when they're young children, in their actual relationships, rather than in some pre-existing or independently existing entity. We unconsciously discover or construct our essence, partly by imagining ourselves as the object of other eyes, or selves. It is when we appear as characters in our own inner stories, and in particular, when we can imagine ourselves as objects in the narratives or minds of others, that we construct ourselves. This is also the key idea in Buddhist teaching of anatta, no self, which is sometimes misleadingly translated as no soul. self is not pre-existing, or as they say, self-arising, but is a dependent or virtual reality constructed and for the Buddhists maintained by our inner dialogues. I find it especially interesting, really, that this was intuited in ancient times, right back to the first two Genesis myths recounted in the Old Testament. When we are expelled from Eden, humanity's loss of innocence is the price paid for self-consciousness. Adam and Eve, for the first time, judged themselves as objects in other minds, in this case God's, and they have to cover their nakedness or vulnerability they had never experienced earlier. This is a mythological statement of the emergence in every human life of reflective awareness, the creation, time and time again, of every self in every life. From that point on, our personal validity is always very conditional and very fragile. It is rooted in our relationships within our environment, and especially with other human beings. This fragile self, which emerges with the theory of mind at around 3 or 4 years, takes a lot of maintaining, and we spend the rest of our lives trying to work through the wound that this introduces into life. You call it existential angst, or Buddhist dukkha, or Christianity's original sin, or Milton's Paradise Lost. It's a sting made even worse by the fading memory of a pre-conscious golden age, when we were 0 and 1 or 2. And notice also that this ancient Genesis tradition is dualistic thought. It is the dualistic thought which brings our fall from primordial grace, from the bliss of unconscious participation in the natural world. It's the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil that brought death and suffering into the world. From then on, we could imagine our death, life overshadowed by a consciousness of death, a never-ending struggle for an elusive validity as I to realize or make object-like the subjective self in an objective world, just like those around us, who as objects we do perceive as real, whereas we perceive ourselves as subjective, fragile wannabes. Incidentally, the Genesis tradition also makes the link with language, words, naming. This is the way God does the act of creating. And it says, and God said, "Let there be this," and it was. For all this, it's the feature that causes us all these problems is also that which drives us to excel. The gap between what is and what we can imagine generates the desire to aspire. We aspire to what we can imagine. Looked at in this way, we could say that religion is the poetry of aspiration. It's analogous to Richard Dawkins, who says that physics is the poetry of reality. So it's not a matter of choosing to aspire to excellence, to be rid of our doubt or our discontentment. They come together. They're different sides of the same coin.